My name is Bianca, and I am 24. My parents threw my twin sister a huge birthday party and told me, "Stay home, nobody wants you there." And that sentence is where everything truly began. The words were said so casually, like they were reminding me to take out the trash or lock the door behind me, but they landed heavy, sinking straight into my chest. It was our birthday week, the kind that had always felt complicated because being a twin meant comparisons were unavoidable. But this time there was no comparison at all. There was a clear winner. And it wasn't me. My parents were buzzing with excitement, running around the house with guest lists, decorations, and catering menus, all for my twin sister. I stood in the hallway, listening to them argue over flower, colors, and music playlists, realizing none of those conversations included me. When I finally asked quietly, almost apologetically, what time I should get ready, my mother didn't even look up. She said the party was for my sister, that it would be better if I stayed home. And then came the line that replayed in my head for days. "Nobody wants you there." I nodded like I understood, like it made sense, and walked back to my room before they could see my face crack. That night, I lay on my bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about how strange it was that two people could be born on the same day, raised in the same house, and yet be treated like they belonged to different worlds. My sister had always been the golden one, loud, charming, effortlessly loved, while I was the quiet background, the one people forgot to invite. Still, hearing it said out loud by my own parents felt like confirmation of a fear I'd tried to bury for years. On the day of the party, the house transformed into something unrecognizable. Balloons filled the living room, music thumped through the walls, and the smell of expensive food drifted everywhere. I stayed in my room, door closed, scrolling through social media and watching photos appear in real time, my sister laughing, hugging friends, posing with our parents under a banner with her name on it. No mention of me. No happy birthday for both of us. Just her. I tried to tell myself it was only one night, that I could survive a few hours of being invisible. But loneliness has a way of growing louder when you try to ignore it. As the evening went on, my chest started to feel tight. At first I thought it was anxiety, the kind that comes when you feel unwanted in your own home. But then my throat began to itch. My skin burned and breathing became work. I realized I was having an allergic reaction, probably something from earlier that day, and panic set in fast. I went to the kitchen for my meds, but they weren't there. My hands were shaking, my vision blurring, and the music from the party outside sounded distant and unreal. That's when the thought hit me, cold and sharp. I was alone. My parents were busy celebrating my twin. My sister was surrounded by friends, and I was struggling to breathe in the same house, completely unseen. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911 with trembling fingers. When the operator answered, noted my breathing, and told me help was on the way, I felt a strange mix of relief and humiliation. This wasn't how I imagined spending my birthday. Alone, scared, and calling for help, while laughter echoed through the walls. When the paramedics arrived, they moved quickly, professional, and calm, asking me questions as they checked my vitals. One of them asked for my emergency contacts, and without thinking, a bitter laugh escaped my mouth. I told him I didn't have any. The words sounded harsher out loud than they had in my head, but they were true. He looked at me strangely, like he didn't quite believe me, like he was waiting for a name to follow. But there was nothing else to say. I stared at the floor, embarrassed and exhausted, wondering how my life had come to a point where I couldn't name a single person who would show up for me. As they prepared to take me to the ambulance, I could still hear the party going on, my parents' voices, my sister's laughter, all of it happening as if I didn't exist at all. And in that moment, lying on the stretcher, struggling to breathe on my own birthday while my twin was being celebrated, I realized this wasn't just about a party. It was about years of being sidelined, dismissed, and told, directly or indirectly, that I didn't matter. What I didn't know yet was that the night wasn't over, and the truth about who cared, who lied, and who had been watching from the shadows was about to come out in a way I never expected. The ambulance doors closed, cutting off the noise of the party, and for the first time that night there was silence. As we pulled away from the house, one of the paramedics spoke into his radio, confirming details, and that's when I heard my name. He paused, looked at his screen again, then looked at me with a crease in his forehead. He said very carefully, "Ma'am, your sister is the one who called this in." I blinked at him, convinced I'd misheard. I told him that wasn't possible, that I was the one who dialed 911 because I didn't have anyone else. He exchanged a look with his partner, and then said the words that still echo in my head. "She told us something very different." My heart pounded harder than the allergic reaction itself. He explained that an hour earlier, someone identifying herself as my twin sister had called, reporting that I was alone, sick, and being ignored by my parents during her birthday party. She said she was scared for me, that our parents wouldn't listen, and that if she didn't make the call herself, no one would. I felt tears burn my eyes, not from fear this time, but from shock. All evening, I'd believed I was completely unwanted, that nobody cared enough to notice I was missing, let alone in danger. Yet somehow, the one person I thought had everything had been watching quietly, worrying about me. At the hospital, while doctors stabilized me, the truth unraveled fast. A nurse mentioned that my parents had been contacted, but hadn't answered right away. When they finally showed up hours later, they looked more annoyed than concerned, asking why the party had been interrupted. My sister arrived shortly after them, eyes red, face pale, and when she saw me, she broke down. She admitted everything right there in the hallway. She said she'd begged our parents to let me come to the party, that she hated how they treated me, how they always made it feel like there was only room for one of us to shine. When they refused and told me to stay home, "Nobody wants you there." She said something inside her snapped. She noticed I wasn't responding to her texts, heard the music while passing my closed door, and realized something was wrong. She called 911 because she was terrified of losing me. That was when my parents' faces changed. Not with guilt, but with anger at her. They accused her of embarrassing them, of ruining her own birthday, of making a scene. Listening to them argue in a hospital corridor while I lay there, recovering felt surreal. For the first time, though, I wasn't shrinking. I wasn't apologizing. I spoke up, my voice shaky but loud enough. I repeated their words back to them, exactly as they'd said them. "Stay home. Nobody wants you there." The hallway went quiet. Nurses stared. My parents looked stunned, like they didn't expect their words to ever leave the house. I told them how I'd laughed. When the paramedic asked for emergency contacts because I truly believed I didn't have any, I told them how it felt to be erased on my own birthday. My sister stood next to me, crying silently, and when I finished, she took my hand and said she was done pretending everything was fine. That night changed everything. Not because my parents suddenly became loving or apologetic, they didn't, but because I finally saw the truth clearly. I wasn't unwanted by everyone. I had been unwanted by people who should have protected me, and that distinction mattered. Over the next few weeks, my sister and I talked more honestly than we ever had. She admitted she'd always felt guilty for being favored, for being celebrated while I was pushed aside. I admitted how alone I'd felt, how close I'd come to believing there was something wrong with me. Together, we made choices that upset our parents, setting boundaries, spending time together without them, slowly building a relationship that wasn't based on comparison. The party photos still exist online, frozen smiles and decorations, but for me, that night will always be remembered differently. It was the night I almost lost my life, and the night I learned that love doesn't always come from where you expect it. When I think back to lying there, struggling to breathe, convinced nobody cared, I realize how wrong I was, and how dangerous that belief had become. That's why I'm telling this story now. If you've ever been made to feel invisible, unwanted, or replaceable by your own family, please hear me. Their failure to love you properly is not a measure of your worth. Sometimes the truth is painful. Sometimes it arrives in the middle of the worst night of your life, but it can also set you free. If this story moved you, if it made you feel seen or understood, then don't walk away quietly. Subscribe to the channel and stay with us. Because these stories are proof that even when you're told nobody wants you there, your voice still matters and it deserves to be heard.